It doesn't matter if you're an artist, an entrepreneur, or an athlete. Obstacles are inevitable. Pain is inevitable. Hardship. And therefore, change is inevitable. So how do you build up your resilience to be prepared for those inevitable obstacles that will come your way and help yourself bounce back so that you can write the story that you dream about? Well, luckily for you, that's exactly what we're going to talk about in today's episode. Welcome to the Storytelling Lab, where we break down the art and science of storytelling. My name is Bennett. I am your host, and I'm a filmmaker and an author on a quest to understand how we can tell better stories so that we can do better work and make the world a better place. Each episode, I host one of the world's best storytellers to help you understand how to leverage storytelling to increase your sales, deepen your connections, and serve your audiences better. What's up, storytellers? Welcome back to the Storytelling Lab podcast. This is episode 193, and today my guest is Nina Sossamon-Pogue. Nina comes from the world of gymnastics. She was a U.S. gymnast. She was a gymnast for the LSU team, and then transitioned from the athletic identity, which never really leaves your identity, by the way, and we talk about that, to the world of journalism, to the world of tech and entrepreneurship, and now to the world of thought leadership. And she's a public speaker and a personality who talks about resilience, change. How do you strengthen yourself? Not just strengthen yourself like what Brene Brown calls armoring up, which we do talk about as well, but how do you prepare yourself? How do you bounce back? How do high performers who are inevitably going to deal with and struggle with failures, sometimes massive failures, how do you understand that? Well, it's a little cliche, but that life is a marathon. Your story does not end here. If you keep going, what are the tools and the systems you can put in place to prepare yourself for these obstacles that will come your way? We talk about this on the Storytelling Lab all the time because this is storytelling. Sorry, I'm getting excited because I love this stuff so much. I nerd out about it so much. But I had a real resilience expert on the show, but we talk about it when we talk about your story all the time, because no matter who is a guest on the show, we always come back to the story that you tell yourself. And so often when we get caught in that pit and we're struggling with whatever our this is, as Nina says, it's so easy to get tunnel vision and get lost and get fearful and believe that you can't make it out. But this is not how your story ends. However, it's not enough to just say like, oh, keep going. I mean, that's the first step for sure. But it's not enough to just say, hey, this is not how it ends. Keep going, guy. There has to be tactics, skills, and tools that you use. And Nina delivers these. We don't just talk big picture, high level theory. We talk about how you make the change, the steps you need to take, actionable steps that you must take. And oof, I love this conversation so much because for some reason, I mean, we all deal with challenges. I've had a very traumatic and dark periods of my life. Nina has too, and we talk about that. And we talk about how you get up, dust yourself off, and keep going. Because ultimately, what other choice do we have? Whether we're an artist and we're creating films or books, or screenplays, or musicals, or whatever, or whether we're an entrepreneur and we have a new tech startup or a new product we want to launch, or if we're an athlete. And hey, guess what, folks? Spoiler alert. I think the personality types that do best in all three of those fields are exactly the same. Risk takers. Folks that have built up that resiliency. And I hope that we can do that with you today. So here's my conversation with Nina Sossamon-Pogue, and I hope that you love it. Nina, welcome to the Storytelling Lab.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I am too. We were talking a little bit briefly about your gymnastic background, which I think is really cool. I am interested in gymnastics. I wish I would have had the opportunity to start it when I was younger. I think I could have had something there. But I'm a sports fan. I grew up playing sports. I was an athlete, and so I love watching that. My daughter's getting into gymnastics, so I was excited to talk to somebody with that background. And I often have people in this space, the public speaking space, the thought leader space. I don't necessarily love that term, but people in the public sphere that do have an athletic background. So my first question is a little bit into that. And we talked briefly for a moment ago when you said, yeah, we might have a girls' trip. Some friends of mine that used to compete and maybe or maybe not with cocktails involved, throw some skills out there on a beach weekend. How much of that athletic competitive nature is still within you?
Oh, a lot.
quick answer.
Yeah, I'm very competitive. I like that competitive vibe about me, and my kids will tell you I was not the mom that let them win growing up. Nope, you will earn that. It didn't matter if it was a board game or a race, but yeah, I was not the oh, you got it, baby. No, very competitive.
How does that play into your mentality, though, of being someone who is building a business based off of your ideas?
Yeah, I think the competitiveness, the things that I learned as a young athlete carried over into all of my careers. So I think that literally when you're a gymnast, you fall down and get back up and smile and keep going. That's just the most basic. You fall off the beam, you got 30 seconds to remount, smile, and get your shit together and go. So that's the plan. And so in life, that has certainly served me well. I've not had, you could read my resume and go, USA Gymnast, Emmy award-winning news anchor, did a tech company, really successful IPO. But what you don't see is I also didn't make the Olympic team. Once when I was on TV at one TV station after 10 years, I got fired. They went younger and blonder. I have been through a divorce. I've been through enough, failures and challenges and a trauma situation in my life. But that getting back up and keep going very much is how I'm wired. That's why I speak on resilience now, because people kept coming to me going, how do you do that? But your question is that athleticism, that what I learned as an athlete, who I was as a human, as an athlete, very much carried over into all of my careers, and then certainly now into my entrepreneurial, running my own show business.
I have a hypothesis, I guess. The personality types that I see with athletes, entrepreneurs, and also artists. I don't know how much experience you have in that field. That's an assumption, and I may be wrong. But talk to me about, do you see those parallels in the type of person that is either attracted to the entrepreneurial world based on your experience in the athletic world and in the tech world?
I do. I see a lot of that. And, when I was in tech for years, I had to hire and fire a lot of people because I had, hundreds of people that reported up through me, or we had actually an upside down org chart. So I supported them is how we talked about it. But it was, and when I would often do interviews, and I could tell in an interview if someone had been an athlete. There's a couple of key things that you notice. One, they're more comfortable talking about what they do wrong. And their failures and things, because as an athlete, think about it, every day you step out there and a coach is like, do this better, do that better, don't do that, run faster, jump higher, catch like this, whatever your sport is, flip this way, twist sooner. So you're being told what to do all the time and how to get better. And sometimes if someone hasn't been an athlete, they're not used to that in your face. Hey, fix this, fix this, fix this. And they take it more personally and they feel like they're being attacked. So I'm really comfortable working with people and managing teams of people who I can very quickly go, oh, that was cool. Try this different, do that. Just like you would as a coach. So and I find that success in business, I find that people, maybe it's not who's attracted to being an artist or being, an entrepreneur, but that's the people who make it.
Yeah.
So maybe it's not, I think a lot of people would love to go be an actor.
That's a good point.
Or would love to go and, be an entrepreneur. But unless you have that piece of you that's okay with failing and being corrected over and over and over. Think about actors or musicians. Like, you get it wrong so many times before you get it right.
Absolutely. And that's where my mind goes. And I still struggle with it like anyone else, but I am used to moving forward regardless.
Right.
There are more projects and stories that will never be told or got half told and never released in my career and any other filmmaker or storyteller's career than there will ever be that make it to the finish line. There are so many things that can go wrong and do go wrong. So I learned early in my career not to be sensitive and attached. And yeah, you have to certainly be that way as an athlete. I often equate it to like Major League Baseball. Like, you're hitting 30% and you're an all-star, right? 30%. Yet often in business or in life, we put so much on our goals that if one fails, like it's almost like we link that to our identity.
Yeah, and nowadays with AI and these data-driven decisions and data-driven workforces, you have your KPIs, you have the stuff you're working towards. I'm talking a lot of lingo in the tech world, but
Key performance indicators.
Yes, thank you very much. But you have your metrics or your targets, or if you're in sales, you're carrying a number. You have that you're working towards, and all that you focus on is that thing. And so as soon as you don't make it, you get dinged. And as soon as you do make it, they just up the ante. So it's very difficult to feel success in that space. And I think a lot of people fall out and filter out and don't make it because you're so quickly told you're not making it, because the data's turned around so quickly back at you. One of my favorite, here's a fun story. Here's a fun thing to think about when we think about how our brains are working with the success and the not success. When's the last time you went on a vacation, like flew somewhere, like went on a vacation?
I mean, it's actually coming up tomorrow.
Okay. Oh, that's right. So, okay, let's use that. So you're getting ready to go on vacation, right? And you have saved for this and you've gotten excited about it and you packed and your whole family, like everybody's gung-ho. So you're going to go on this vacation. You're going to have a great time. You're going to, I don't know, get sunburned or do the thing or see the stuff and eat too much food and do all the things we do on vacation.
Definitely.
And then you're going to get on the plane on the way home and your app's going to come up and go, thank you for staying with us. On a scale of 1 to 10, what did you think? And did you love this? And you're going to fill out their little survey and go, yay, I'm like a little sunburned, a little tired, but yay, that was so much fun, and give them whatever stars. As soon as you hit that, then it's going to populate and go, thank you. And here's 5 vacations just like this one that people like you are taking. And if you don't book it now, you're going to miss out. Like, you're not even home yet.
Right.
So that's in our success. That's in our entrepreneurial, no matter what we're doing. The next thing is the data is driving it right back at us so quickly. And the FOMO, you're going to miss out thing, they just tapped into our psychology so well that it's making it harder, I think, for entrepreneurs or athletes or anybody. The feedback's too fast.
What was the transition for you from gymnastics to the world of journalism? There might have been something in between there, but that was your first line of work, right?
Yeah. So gymnastics was like my whole world, like so many young athletes, and then I didn't make the Olympic team, so I was on the U.S. gymnastics team and on the cover of magazines as Olympic hopeful, that whole thing, back in the day, in the 80s, and then I didn't make the team. I was on the U.S. team with Japan, Hungary, Germany. Like, I'm wearing the USA sweats, and I'm there with Mary Lou Retton and Bart Connor. But I'm like the one you never heard of. and then 4 to 6 girls make the team, and then there's a handful of alternates, and then everybody else is the also ran. So I was in the also ran group. And so that was my first big failure. But then I went to LSU, kind of got my act together after that big failure at the ripe old age, thinking my life was ruined at 16. Yeah. And I went to LSU, did gymnastics there. But then I blew out my knee. So I am getting to the answer to your question. I blew out my knee in college, and I had to figure out what life was going to look like after gymnastics. And that was probably my biggest pivot. And I got really fortunate to have a couple of good influences in my life who helped me figure out my path to journalism. And then I ended up working in a internship in a television station, and I loved it. It was fast. It was competitive. It was all the things, I'm a little bit of an adrenaline junkie. It was all the things that I liked in a career. And I was really, being a Navy brat, again, you skill stack what you're good at. I could make friends with anybody. So I could step in there and do interviews with people I haven't met and be comfortable in that situation. So that was my first big career pivot.
I think in life we go through this, but that moment where you're an athlete, you're a gymnast, U.S. gymnast. That is all your identity, right? It's what you thought you were going to do. And when that changes, it's such a shot, a blow to the stomach. How do you navigate that in terms of resilience? And what I mean is like a genuine shift in your identity. Like, I was this, and now I can't be anymore. That's so huge, right? Especially at that age. But we do go through that throughout our lives. What are the tools to navigate that? How did you navigate that as a 16-year-old? You did allude to mentors, which I think might be important.
Yeah, so there's a lot of pieces to it. So after once I, the 16-year-old I needed to go to college, and there was no option except for a scholarship. So that's why I got my act together and went got my gymnastics going again to get a scholarship. But when I lost my sport, I was 19. I was a kid, and I blew out my knee on a beam dismount in competition. And so I went from, this was my whole life, to not knowing who I was without this sport. And I like to say back then it was like my sweatshirt and my bumper sticker on my car. Like nowadays it's their TikTok and their Instagram. Like they identify as this. So to lose that identity and not know who I was very difficult. And I talk about this a lot in my book and from the stage. And the best way to think about it here in hindsight, now that I'm in my 50s, can look back. When I was 19 and lost my sport, gymnastics was 75% of what I knew in life. At the age of 19, I'd spent 75% of my life in the gym. It's what I knew. I'd been in there most of my life in the gym. So of course it felt like everything. Mm-hmm. Of course it felt like my life was ruined. I'd wasted my whole life in a gym. We hear this. When my son had Tommy John surgery. He was a baseball player. And he's like, I wasted all my whole life in this dugout with sweaty boys, and like I wasted. So I felt the same way. I felt like I wasted my whole life in this sport. Now, I can look back now and see that, remember that 75% of my life. By the time I was 50 and my kids left for college, gymnastics was then 28% of my life. And my time parenting kids was longer. My time in television was longer. Like I had bigger chunks of my time in tech was almost as big. So I had bigger pieces of my life, and I can put that in perspective. And I like to, joke sometimes and say, if I live to be 100, which I need to drink less wine and take better care of myself. But if I live to be 100, then it's only 15%. Gymnastics will be 15% of my life. Yeah. And it's not the whole of it. But when things happen in our life, it's very hard to put it in perspective. And I was very fortunate. Like you said, I had that mentor. I didn't make all the good choices. I ended up working in the laundry room. It's kind of an odd story. So to keep my scholarship, at LSU, I had to work for the athletic department, and they had me working in the laundry room. And so not washing cute little leotards, I was washing like everything. I sometimes will say, my claim to fame was almost that I washed Shaquille O'Neal's jockstrap. Like, yay me. So thank goodness I found my way out of there. But I was like in this laundry room, and I would sit outside the laundry room. I'd switch out the stuff. I'd crutch outside, and I'd lean up against the wall and watch all the other athletes walk to practice and get some sunshine and do my coursework. And every day, there's one athletic advisor, and it was just an academic advisor. We didn't have any counselors or anything back then. Would say, "How you doing, Nina?" And I would go, "Great, best ever." I'm sure, something like that. I don't know, but I was sure I was snarky and not fun to be around, because I was the one who would get up every morning and like take my Percocet with a shot of Jaeger and then crutch my way down to peak physical therapy. I was just not in a good place. Okay, yeah. So people will look at me and think I made all the right choices. I did not. So one day he finally said, "Hey," and he plopped down next to me and actually had a real conversation with me. And he said, "Well, what do you want to do after this?" And he was the first person who had ever asked me that.
Right.
No one had ever asked me, "What do you want to do after gymnastics?" I had never thought about it. I had never had a real discussion with anybody as a grown-up. And that became a conversation. And he's the one who helped me get a job in sports information, find my way through, to my first internship in a television station, and go that route. So I talk about the framework it takes to move forward and be resilient. I'll throw on my research and that humans piece, the who's in it with you. None of us were meant to go this alone. Who's in it with you? The humans piece is a big part of it. That's one piece of my 4-part framework. You find people who have had big success, not just survived something, but like really thrived on the other. They didn't go alone. They had help. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, I love that concept of giving it time and patience, and when you look at it in the bigger picture of your life, how that percentage changes. It's really hard to do that in the moment, especially when you're young.
Right.
It's hard to do it when you're old. It's hard to zoom out. I often talk about this in the storytelling space because I think, first of all, and this is one of the reasons I was so excited to have you on, is it all starts with the story we tell ourselves. As artists, as creators, I mean, we can't create great stories for other people. We can't impact other people until we have a decent amount of control of the story we tell ourselves. And I have this kind of a metaphor, like if you can zoom out to that 30,000 foot view, that bird's eye view, and look down at your story or your journey, we'll say, it's easier to see kind of the obstacles that might come, the paths you might have, shouldn't have taken. When you're in it, like kind of like being in a maze, it's tunnel vision, right? You can't see. If you can zoom out to this perspective, you can have this objective view of it, but it's really hard to do. Do you have any advice or any tools for that person who's in that tunnel vision? Because I can't just say like, well, yeah, this sucks now. Most of my life was a gymnast. But when I'm 50, it will feel like a little, you know what I mean? It's easier said than done, right? If you can get there, great. It could help you navigate it, I think. But do you have any tools for helping people objectively look at their story? It's really hard you get caught in that pit emotionally.
Yeah, it's like you've heard my keynote before. You're using a lot of my same language. It's fun.
Well,
so this zoom out concept is a big piece of it. This T. So I say, whatever this is you're going through, you're big this. So I can't handle this. This is too much. This sucks. Could be a death in the family. It could be a divorce. Could be getting fired. Like this thing that you're dealing with, because we've all got our own stuff. That's why I call it this. The tool that I use is called my lifetime timeline. It's chapter 6 in my book. My daughter she'll call me sometimes when she was in college, and now that she's in New York, I'll say, "How are your friends?" She's like, "Oh, they all think the world's like their whole world is, coming to an end." So I have to do chapter 6 on them all the time. And so here's what chapter 6 is. If you take a piece of paper, and it's a great tool, and you take a piece of paper and you turn it sideways and you draw a line across it, put a dot in the middle, and that's 50, and then just make your dots on each side. So you have 10 dots. Draw 10 dots across that line. That's your lifetime timeline. Okay, that's your whole life. And the whole piece of paper is your big, messy, marvelous life. And so, and your zoom out concept. So you can put it down on a piece of paper. And then I say, put whatever this is, put a dot wherever you are today. So I'm in my 50s over here somewhere. You're over here a little before that somewhere. You'd put your dot there and go, this is when you're dealing with this, put a dot there. And then sometimes I'll have folks say, okay, put all your successes, the stuff that you would be proud of, you would see on LinkedIn, above the line, not about when they happened. Graduated high school, maybe you went to college, you got a degree, or you got married, you bought a house, you did the thing, all the good stuff goes across the top there, the stuff you're proud of. And then I say down below that line, up to this dot, now put down the stuff that you got through. Maybe you were bullied in school, or you failed a class, you got fired. And I have people build that out. I call that your reverse resume. And I will argue that's where that reverse resume is what really makes you who you are. So I have people look at that, and it brings you to this dot, that where you are now. And there's two pieces to this that are really magical. So one, you can kind of connect the dots as you go forward, and you'll see life's been this up and down your whole life. Nobody gets a pass. Everybody has this up and down lifetime, highs and lows. We're not flatline people. That would be boring. So we're living a big life. Yes, it's going to go up and down. And then there's the dot, and then there's all this blank space ahead. And you're more in control of what goes into the blank space ahead than anybody else. So to see that piece of paper and go, oh my gosh, look at all this blank space ahead. And my daughter will do this like on the back of the napkin. I will too in a bar with somebody, like, let's just look at your life real quick. Like, look at all the blank space ahead. And that's the first part of this time mark, is this framework. The T is the timeline. Do the timeline thinking first. Let's zoom out, look at your big, messy, marvelous life. Get it, that it's messy and marvelous, both. And then acknowledge the blank space ahead. That's the T part,
I got a little emotional and some goosebumps there. What I like about looking at the white space ahead of you is when you were explaining that to me, I was trying to put my mindset as there, right? As if you were coaching me. And it made me feel like, oh, and I have a decent amount of control over that part of the story. At this point, right? It's ahead of me. Of course, there are going to be things that are inevitable or things that you can't control, obviously. But when I'm looking back, it's real easy to be like, oh, that was a failure. Oof, that sucked. Yeah, okay, that was good. And just look at it at highs and lows and things that have happened to me. But then when I see that white space, it's empowering. It's liberating. That's what I felt when you were explaining. I was like, oh, but this is yet to come. It's not written. Like, this stuff is already written, i.e., so why are we still tripping about it, right? It's done, right? And I know that's cliche, and I know it's easier said than done, but like, that was empowering thinking about that. And this is why I nerd out about this so much, because life is a story, right? And stories emulate life. I always say the same thing you just said when talking about storytelling specifically. Is like, yeah, it's ups and downs. It's not, this would be boring. That was your words. Yep. A flat line would be boring because it's not life.
Yeah, your line's going to look a little like an echocardiogram.
Yeah,
you don't want it to be a flat line. That would be bad, people. That would be bad.
I'll send you something after the show. Kurt Vonnegut was one who famously had these Shapes of Stories lecture and thesis that he used to deliver. And then some years later in 2016, there was a study done where they took AI and analyzed 1,700 novels, and they sketched out the shapes of the emotional arcs of stories. And there was only a handful, 6, Kurt Vonnegut said 8. But they were exactly like you said, the echocardiogram. Now, some might be a rise and a fall, then a rise. Some might be a fall and a rise pattern. Yeah. But it's the same shape. I'll send you that. You'll love that.
I love it.
How do we know that there's going to be ups, hopefully, and we know there's going to be downs. Yeah. How do we prepare ourselves for the inevitable, what it sounds like is inevitable, obstacles that are going to come our way?
Yeah. So, and in this framework, whatever this is, that's what I call the obstacles or the challenge or the change that happens in your life. That's your this, whatever your this is. And first you put in the timeline, figure out where you are with it. And then the H in this is humans. I always say you can turn that piece of paper over and on one side, draw a line down the middle of it. And on one side, put who's helping and who's hurting in this moment. And even the people we love the most might not be helping in a certain moment. Yeah. But you have to assess your people. Your humans are really important if you're going through a tough time. Who's helping, who's hurting. And then what I do, like back to the front of the page on the dot, so the humans piece, I draw a circle around it because when something happens, we feel very alone. So then we have to assess who's in our circle and who's out of our circle. And if there's nobody in your circle with you, you've got to pull someone in. That's the first thing you have to do. So you put the line on there, figure out where you are in your story, acknowledge that you've gone through tough times before. This is another tough thing. And then draw a circle around it, figure out who your humans are, who's helping, who's hurting. If there's nobody in there, pull someone in, a trusted friend, maybe a therapist, maybe a mentor, maybe just someone you can say all the crazy stuff inside your head out loud to. Like, we need to do that. So there's the H is the humans piece. And then the next piece of it is what you were getting to, what I call the I in this, T.H.I. We're spelling this. The I is isolate. So I have people draw lines, parallel lines up and down, okay, vertical lines up and down on both sides of that little circle you just drew. Both sides. Because if you're spending you have to stay right in this moment. Any good therapist will tell you. If you spend all your time in the past, the woulda, shoulda, couldas, I wish I hadn't done that, hadn't married that guy, hadn't taken that job, hadn't done this thing. That's where depression lives in the past, And if you spend all your time in the future, any good therapist will tell you that's where anxiety lives, in the what ifs and the doomsday scenarios. So that's the anxiety piece. So I have them draw lines, and not before or after. What are we actually dealing with right now? Because your power's in the moment. What action can you take? A lot of my research and my work around resilience is a little bit of cognitive behavior therapy, a little bit of stoicism. It's my own mashup of experience, research, cognitive behavior therapy, stoicism, neuroscience, neuroplasticity. Anyway, so you have these lines, not before or after, but what are you actually dealing with right now that you can take action on? Sometimes I'll show people a glass of water. You answer this one. So I show you a glass of water and there's some water in it. Is it half full or half empty?
Listen, are you asking me?
Yeah.
It's half full.
Yeah. See, I want to be the half full person too. We all want to be the half full.
But wait
person.
a minute. I have a pretty good argument, a pretty good objective argument for why I think it's half full
Okay,
too.
go ahead.
So, we'll have a coffee mug here. No coffee mug starts off full and then we deplete it, right? It starts off empty.
And we have to pour in.
That's the default state of a coffee mug is empty, and we pour it, we make it full.
Right.
So when you fill it up halfway and it's halfway full, it's not empty, right? I think that might work if it came full and then you drank half, then yeah, it would be half empty. Maybe that's a bottle of Coke or something. That's my thesis. But yeah, I'm definitely a half full person.
Right. And I am too. And I have, my sister's a half empty person. I always give her a hard time, but there's people like that everywhere. In general, we want to be the half full person, but I show this image to people and I'm like, it's neither. It is a 6-ounce glass with 3 ounces of water in it. Yeah. So in this isolate moment, we have to look at exactly what we're dealing with. Take our wants and our emotions out of it. What exactly are we dealing with without our subjective thoughts? Like, it's not half full, or it's a 6-ounce glass with 3 ounces of water in it. Yeah. So if you go through a divorce, I'm no longer with this person and I need to find a path forward. It's just simple. Like, you have to go through and just, what exactly are we dealing with? So that's the isolate piece of that. And then the last piece of the S is right smack dab in your wheelhouse, my new friend. It's your story.
Hey.
It's the story you're telling yourself. Because the words in your head come out of your mouth and that becomes your reality. And you know this better than anybody. The words in your head come out of your mouth and that becomes your reality. And how we talk about what's going on in the moment is really key. So the long answer to your question is to kind of, when something happens, put it in perspective, pull in the right people, isolate it, and then figure out what you're talking, how you're going to talk about it.
Yeah, you're so right about the half full, half empty, but it's what you said. It's neither. 3 ounces in a 6-ounce glass. I would also, this is not a debate, but a +1, maybe a piggyback. It's neither and it's both. Like, it is simultaneously half empty and half full.
I love
and
that.
It's neither, right? And to be honest, that's the balance of life. Like, that's the yin and the yang, right? It's not black and white. It's always somewhere there in the middle, or a little bit of both. Yeah. I talk about the art and science of storytelling. So the science is like the structure and the formulas to follow, and the art is the emotion and the heart we put behind, the head versus the heart. It's not one or the other. They're not mutually exclusive. It's always both. So I really also nerd out just about the duality and polarity of it all. And that's a good example of it. It's like, we're too caught up in like, is it this, is it that? Well, it's neither, or it's both. Either way, it's not the point.
It's not right. We can talk about it all day, but the reality is,
exactly,
there it is.
How do you mentioned at the very end there, which I loved, the story that you tell yourself. Man, I think that is something that, as I've studied this, that is one of the most limiting variables in our paths, in our journeys, in our stories, is these stories, that we tell ourselves, these narratives that we subscribe to. And I find that oftentimes they've either been written in our childhood, heavily influenced by some other people or other circumstances, right? And we often don't ask ourselves, is that true? Or why do I feel that way? Right. Like, why do I feel imposter syndrome, or why do I feel less than in this topic? So you mentioned, focusing on the story that you tell yourself. How do you change those limiting beliefs? How do you reframe those limiting beliefs and hopefully leverage them, maybe to find some power out of them?
There's so much to this, and we all do it. There's nobody gets a pass here either. Like, nobody gets a pass. Life has ups and downs, and nobody gets a pass on not speaking to themselves in their own head. How we talk to ourselves is really, really important, and it's very difficult. There's not a one size fits all answer to this. I focus less on the self-blame and shame part, and more on the self-sabotaging language that we use, the words that are in our head. So self-sabotage, overgeneralizing. This always happens to me. How come I always end up in this space? Or the catastrophizing. And we know people like this. Everything's ruined. This is never going to work. Like that catastrophe language in our head. Jumping to conclusions. They didn't text me back, so they must not like me. Or I sent that email that I agonized over, and the boss never got back to me, so I'm probably getting fired. Like, we do that. We go to worst case scenarios in our heads. And
there's no benefit of the doubt.
No, there's no, and that's one that I tell sometimes from the stage. I'm like, who has sent that email? Like, you agonized over it and you hit send late in the day because you were trying to get it just right. and you hit send to your boss or a manager, and then they don't respond. And you're up like you think about it all night. You go to your kid's thing and you're not even noticing them because you're in your head going, oh my God, he didn't answer and she didn't answer. And they probably think I'm stupid or this was a bad idea or they hate it or I'm going to get fired. Like you're already packing your desk up. And then you go in the next morning and you're like, did you see my email? And they're like, oh no, I was at my kid's game last night. I didn't even look at it. Yeah. They and you weren't even paying attention to your kid's game. They didn't even look at it. So we do this. Like,
I know.
It's so
I'm going
painful.
through it actually right now.
Oh my gosh. So stop. It does you zero good. All the energy you spend doing that is not helping you be happy, have success, get to your goals. It's not helping anything. This self-sabotage is what keeps us from having success. If we overgeneralize, if we catastrophize, if we jump to conclusions. And there's two more. There's exaggerate. I have 8 million things to do. Like if you start saying that, it becomes your reality. One of my favorite sayings is, we spend most of our time in our own head. Let's make sure it's a nice place to live. Like be a little better about that. Like I have 50 loads of laundry this weekend. No one's. I've asked audiences of 1,000 people. Raise your hand if you've done 50 loads of laundry. Like 6 is a crappy weekend, but 50's not a reality. Yet we use the language. And then the other piece of the self-sabotaging language is the belaboring, which also it's just the going back. Woulda, shoulda, coulda. So there's not an easy answer to how we're kinder to ourselves. The one thing I will always remind myself and others, I actually did it this morning with my husband over coffee. Because I was saying some things and he's like, wow, if you were you sitting on the porch talking to you, you would not say that. Yeah. But we have to talk to ourselves like we would a child or a friend. Talk to yourselves like you would a child or a friend. The child example that I love to give is I show a picture of this woman who's talking to her daughter who, she looks like she's just home from work. And I say, mom came home and she's really grumpy and in the obvious. And then my little girl's like, what's wrong, mommy? Are you okay? This mommy doesn't go, well, today was a crappy day at work and I'm an idiot and I work with a bunch of idiots and everything went wrong and I'm probably going to lose my job and we're probably going to have to cancel Christmas. Like no one would talk to a kid like that. We do it in our own heads, but no one would talk to a child like that. She's probably saying something like, well, today was just a tough day and things didn't go as planned, but I'm smart and I work with a lot of smart people and we're going to figure it out. It's not like we're going to have to cancel Christmas or anything. We just have to get better at that self-talk. It's one of the most important things we can do for our own happiness, health, and success. I mean, your health and your success are hand in hand, folks. The cortisol and the unhappiness, like they do take a toll on our bodies.
I think you and I should we will hopefully continue to have conversations. I'll have so much I want to send you after this just because we absolutely speak each other's language, but in a different field, similar field, but not exactly the same. But all the neuroscience and that you're referring to, like I have so many storytelling nerds on the show that talk about that stuff. So I think I'll continue to send you stuff, but I love it so much. You mentioned something earlier at the beginning of that last question about I don't like playing the shame and blame game. I'm assuming you're familiar with Brene Brown's work. I'm not sure, what you think about her and not necessarily what I'm asking, but one of the things she often talks about is, whether we're talking to ourselves or talking to someone else, we armor up, we get defensive. What place does vulnerability have? What role does it play in resilience?
Oh, a lot. And I'm a huge Brene Brown fan.
Okay.
Brene Brown fan.
Me too.
I love the shame of, I don't speak on that. I don't research that. That's kind of her wheelhouse. I was just saying, I'm not going to go, I don't focus on that when I'm talking to people, and I don't feel like I'm an expert in that. I'm much more an expert on how do you adapt in a positive way to whatever's going on in your life. Like my definition of resilience is your ability to learn, grow stronger, and adapt in a positive way to whatever happens. But I'm a big fan of hers and I believe in all the work that she does. And I do think that's a big part of how we have success as humans and as entrepreneurs. The vulnerability part is a big part of who I became older in my life. When I was younger, I don't think I was very vulnerable and let myself be seen. But as I've gotten older and started doing this work, I very much, I've written 2 books. My whole world's out there, like all my good and my bad. Talk about getting fired. I talk about trauma. Had a very dark time where I had suicidal ideation. I talk about that. I think the vulnerability part is so important for me as much as it is for the people who are listening. I needed to have that cathartic, let me just put it out into the universe piece of me happen in order for me to be able to help people through that same thing. But I think there's also a trust that comes with vulnerability. I am an open book, and I don't try to be anything I'm not. I think I did that later in life too. Like I showed up today in a baseball cap because I got gray hair and I came straight from the gym. And this is it. This is what you get. But I think that there's something about the vulnerability piece that not having to be perfect, because there's no such thing as that, that really plays a part in success, because we're all defining our own level of success. And I'm a big fan of that changes. Like when I was young, when I was your age and had a 7-8-year-old, my idea of success was very different than what it is right now. I was
fair point.
Working crazy long hours and, and putting everything I had into my career because I put my kids through college. I had to, sort of provide for my family. I was a breadwinner. I had to do all the things. Very different season of my life. I wouldn't change that. I would go back and do it again, just like that. But as once they got into college and finished and adulted, pseudo-adulting, all of them, then I can change what success looks like. Success for me now is very different than I have to make enough money to provide for my children and get them through college and do that. Success now is I need to share what I've learned and make sure that the people around me have success. Success for me is other people's success at this point in my life.
Is there a certain type of person that you like to, well, I don't necessarily like the word target, but that you like to serve, that you like to help?
I do a lot of corporate work. Most of my work is corporate speaking, and my audience is smart, high achievers.
Yeah.
I'm not, we talked about Brene Brown. Her audience is kind of broader. And then there's the Mel Robbins, like high five, get you up off the couch person. My audience isn't that. My audience is really smart, high achieving folks who are already out there doing the work, who are just what I call excellence exhaustion. Like no matter how good you do, you up the ante, up the ante, up the ante. We keep wanting more, do more. Because it's how they're wired. So my audience is very much these high achievers and folks who are trying to figure out where does happiness fit into high achieving and what does success look like as I actually have some success.
It's a constant like tug of war, internal tug of war. It's when you have an athletic background, you've got that competitive, ambitious nature. Mm-hmm. If you've had some trauma, like I come from an alcoholic household, and years later in therapy, I realized that my archetype of the children of adult children of alcoholics was the family hero. Like the whole vibe was negative always at the house. When I came home with all A's, when I scored 20 goals this season, when I got trophies or whatever, it would inject this little positivity. So then I got obsessed with performing, achieving results. And then as you grow older, you struggle with where's that line between like genuine happiness here and like the ego happiness of like, okay, I did another good thing that is fleeting and no one will remember next week. So for me personally, and I think I'm not alone in this because you're talking about these high achievers, what'd you call it? Excellence exhaustion?
Excellence exhaustion.
Yeah. You're pursuing this achievement, but it's just like, yeah, but where is the fulfillment?
Right. It's very different from burnout. That's why I came up with this phrase, excellence exhaustion. Started doing a lot of research in this area. I'm very similar to you. I was the youngest of 4 kids, and not an alcoholic family, but dad was always away at sea. Mom was raising a bunch of kids. It was not like calm. It was not, June Cleaver. No. Right. So I think that there's a lot of us out there and a lot of us in this space. Yeah. So look, you're still serving others. I'm still serving others. Yeah. We have to find a place for that. I would love to tell you I have the answer, but I don't. I think we're all still figuring it out.
Come on, Nina.
My therapist will tell you I'm still figuring it out. I'm a big pro-therapy person. I do believe that it helps a lot to put my thoughts out there to somebody else and have them, put them back at me. but there's something to that. Absolutely. That's my audience. My audience is people like you and people like me who, it's not that, we're making our own lives hard. You realize that. We could just sit on the couch and watch the world go by, but we choose to do hard things. And the world needs people to choose to do hard things.
Yes.
I need people to come up with cures for cancer and Alzheimer's. I need people to push themselves to figure out the environment. I need people to, I can't do that myself, but at this point in my life, if I can step into an audience of a couple thousand people and encourage them to take on the hard stuff and keep pushing and up in the ante while keeping themselves sane. That's my role now, is I need these people to keep going for the hard stuff and going after big, audacious, big, gnarly goals. I think it's really important that we keep doing that as a society and not just sit back and let somebody else, wait for somebody else to do it, or not support people who are doing that and pointing at them going, they're just tryhards. No, they're doing hard stuff.
Yeah.
We need those people. Yeah.
Indeed.
Yeah.
We mentioned Brene Brown earlier. Who else in your space, or it doesn't necessarily have to be in your space, who else inspires you at the moment?
That's interesting. There's a lot of great speakers out there.
Yeah.
And I, watch and I try real hard not to copy, but I do admire a lot of them for the work they've done and for the businesses that they have built. I'm not a performative speaker. There's the big stage is usually the big performative speakers. I actually like an audience of about 200 executives that I can really spend some time with. But the big performative speakers, the people who are just take that stage and are just amazing. There's one, well, there's several, but Cassandra Worthy, she does a lot of stuff in change management. And she's just a cool chick too. And she's got a great attitude and and she's in change. She's in my same space. Resilience is change. So she's one that I admire. I admire her business. I admire her ability to step out there very authentically as herself. So she's one that I would point to. I've always been a big Oprah fan, which is not in the speaking business, but just her vulnerability and her ability to connect with people and to think before she speaks, which I've had to work on as I went through. It's interesting. It's so interesting because when I saw your podcast and we started talking, I was thinking, oh my gosh, are we going to talk about storytelling? Because I've been a storyteller when I did the news all those years.
Yeah.
I was a journalist and you're telling stories in one way. And then in tech, I did a lot, I did our story in deck for our IPO roadshow, and I would do our story when we went to conferences, how do you put together the story of where we are right now, where we're headed. And now I do stories from the stages.
Yeah.
And I think that one thing Oprah, as people I admire, and Cassandra Worthy and the Mel Robbins and the Brene Browns do well is they create stories, like good stories do, that make you feel and make you think. And that's the biggest thing, make me feel and make me think. I had a kickoff call later today for a big conference that I'm doing in Vegas. And one of the things I always say is, how are your people feeling when they come in the room? Tell me what's going on in your industry. How are they feeling when they step in the space to hear me? And then how do you want them to feel when they leave? Because I need to create that through my stories. And I want to know how they're feeling coming in and how you want them to feel when they leave. And that's all done through good storytelling.
Following that thread, from your background as a journalist, also storytelling in tech and now on the stage, what are the tactics that you use to really connect with your audience? What are the tools or the practices that you use that are most effective at getting here and in their heads to initiate, to be the catalyst for that hopeful potential change?
I think listening is the first one, really understanding your audience. So before I step into any situation, I have a whole laundry list of questions I ask about the audience. I want to really know who I'm talking to, because you can't affect change if you don't have an understanding. And I always level set and go, I'm not going to pretend that I understand. I did a big construction conference.
Right.
I'm I'm not going to pretend that I understand large metal building construction, but I do understand, all of you people have to get along with each other, and all of you people have to have a hard job ahead of you, and the world is constantly changing, and your supply chain's changing. I can get the big picture. So understanding your audience and building trust before a word comes out of your mouth. The two most important things are to understand who you're talking to and build some trust before you try to share.
Also on stage, I mean, now you've already engaged the audience instead of just jumping up there and starting a lecture
Right.
where you'll start to see eyes glazing over, people checking phones, like
Yeah.
by going in there and intentionally asking questions.
Yeah, and I do some, self-deprecating things. I always throw a few things out there, like the Shaquille O'Neal's jockstrap and walking, working in the laundry room. That always gets a chuckle. Sometimes I'll talk about, getting fired. They went younger and blonder, and I'll tell the whole story about winning Charleston's favorite news anchor on a Thursday and then getting called into the CEO's office on a Friday and thinking I'm going to get a bonus, and he hands me a box, So the self-deprecating stuff always kind of gets you going because you're just a person.
It does.
I'm just a person and they're just people, and we get to spend an hour together, and that's really all it is.
And levity's important.
Yeah, let's enjoy this next hour. Let's think about some things. Let's learn some things. But the biggest part of that is listening, building some trust, and then on my last thought every time before I step on the stage, or when I would do news, 3 shows a day for all those years, my last thought has always been, what do they need to hear from me? That's always in my head. What do they need to hear? These are people. What do they need to hear? Whether it was a newscast or whether it was, so if this prompter went out or if everything went wrong, there's stuff they need to hear. They need to know that this road is closed and that there's a shooting there, or that there's a storm coming, or they need to understand something. And now if I step into a big room to open a conference, I'm like, what do they need to hear? And in my head, I know what they're coming into the room because I've asked the question. And then I can even adjust on the fly. If I see I'm losing them or I'm not getting the response, I can adjust and go, I'm not giving them what they need. What is it they need? And always in the back of my mind is, what do they need to hear from me? Yeah.
That's good. That's a good kind of North Star to follow. Before we go, I kind of want to end on, there's another parallel out of many that we have in our ideas and thoughts. I love the title of your book. What is it? This is not how it ends?
No, this is not the end.
The end. This is not the end.
It looks like a typewriter. It says the end.
Yes.
And this is my this that I've been talking about. This.
Absolutely.
Whatever your this is.
That stuck with me so much because...
Okay, it didn't because you couldn't remember it, but I love you anyway.
Okay, Nina. Is that the kind of game we're going to play?
No, we're close now. I just got to give you a little crap because it's fun.
No, I love it.
Anyway, the concept stuck with you, so thank you.
That is the coolest title I've ever heard of. You got it wrong, right? You got it wrong. This is me being vulnerable, okay? I make mistakes too. Nina.
Right, and this is me being real. I could have just not said anything, and then somebody listening was like, wait, really? Because he couldn't remember the name of it.
But you had to get a score on the scoreboard, so great.
Yeah, that's right.
So in storytelling structure, I use this to talk with coaching people on their own story, right? Working through a lot of the things that you talk about. Act 2 is known as many things, the messy middle, the Ted Lasso called it the dark forest. Yeah. Right. There's it's that part in the middle that's really hard to get through. And so I often talk to people about, because when you're in there, I mentioned this earlier, you're kind of in that tunnel vision, you're in this pit, and I've been there personally multiple times. And because you're in this tunnel vision, you don't think you're going to get out. You think this is how it ends.
Right.
And it's not. If doing your exercise, if you do the timeline, it's the same thing because you got these other 50 years here. It's not how your story ends if you, keep going, right? And every story, the hero climbs out of that pit. Now, they might learn a different lesson or they might achieve a different goal than you thought they were going to achieve, but they do get out of that. And we get caught in that trap of the messy middle. So I talk about that a lot. I just want to end on that concept from your perspective with the book you wrote of the problem it creates when you think it's the end and how you help people navigate through that, understanding that it's not.
Absolutely. And that's what all my work is about. I truly want to show people that no matter how bad it gets, you can find a way forward. Yeah. I have an online workshop. It's called the Now What Workshop. And so when you have one of those moments in your life where you just like, now what? Like, well, this is not the life I wanted. This isn't who I wanted to be. Nothing works. Now what? Then I help them get past the now what moments. And we can have now what moments at highs and at lows. Like think about the athlete who wins, like trains their whole life and then wins the Olympics. They're like, "This is the best day in your life. Yay." It makes me crazy every time I hear it because I want them to go, "Yeah, best day yet." Like they have their whole, sometimes they're teenagers. I'm like, really?
Right.
You just put you put the end on their book right there? Like they got a big, long story ahead. But the concept, the thinking around that is to be able to sit down with someone and show them, one, that timeline, pull in other people, isolate it. What are we working with? And then let's work on the story in your head. It's sort of what I do through that Now What workshop. It's what I would also work with someone about. That's why I've spent the years to figure out how to do it on a piece of paper, on a napkin. So I can do the whole, and then I write "this is" at the bottom of it. So I've circled it, I've drawn lines, and I can help someone see a way forward, no matter what has happened. And in the darkest moments of my life, when I was involved in a horrible accident, and I really I didn't want to go on. I just didn't think life could ever be happy again. Like I can't see a way where my life's going to be happy again. And everyone's just going to look at me as I was the person who was involved in this thing. So I didn't want that to be me, and I couldn't find a way forward. So I talk about that in my book, and that's why it's not the end. And I wrote that book because it was the book I was looking for in that moment. I saw other people's stories. I saw big PTSD workbooks. I'm like, oh my God, someone just tell me what to do so I don't go jump off a bridge. Like, just give me some things to do. So that book is, when you ask me what would I have you do, I would do, there's 7 chapters in it. There's 7 things you can do, like to take action to actually move forward. Writing a script to protect yourself, because when you're involved, see, even a divorce, which is pretty like commonplace now, but when you're in it, it seems like the whole world, but everybody wants to talk to you about it. Oh, I'm so sorry. So you have to keep reliving it over and over. What happened? You got to relive it over and over. That's a simple one. If you're involved in a traumatic accident and everybody's like, "How are you?" You relive it. What's going, "I'm so sorry." You relive it. Like, so creating a script to protect yourself, a few sentences you can say to move past it. Those types of things. Yeah. Those types of things are really key. And so if people are in a tough spot, that's why the book is out there. But I always, my thing I will end with, and I don't know how much time we have, but I feel like I need to get it in here. It's okay to not be okay. It's just not okay to stay that way. And I'm big into it's okay to not be okay. Sometimes we're in it longer than others, into that, what you call the in-between, or the
messy middle.
The messy middle, that messy middle. It's okay to not be okay. We have messy middles. Stuff happens. Look at me at it. Stuff happens. But then it's not okay to stay that way. And my Now What workshop and my books and stuff are like, let me help you just get out of that. I'm not a licensed therapist. Maybe go find one of those, but I can help you get from, I don't even know what to do in this moment, to, okay, here's where I can move forward and how I can protect myself in this moment. Yeah.
Last question. If you were doing your exercise now on the horizontal line on the piece of paper, and you see your point there wherever you are in this white space ahead of you, what do you hope for that white space? What are you aiming to accomplish or do in that white space?
That is a fabulous question. And I actually have done this exercise on myself. I do it often, but I just did it this past weekend because I'm in one of those moments where I've written a few books, I'm speaking, I have a couple of big things happening where my speaking career is kind of taking off, which is I'm super thankful for after 5 years. I just signed with a new manager. But at the same time, my oldest son and his wife, who live nearby, are moving to California. Now my kids are all out there doing their stuff. I've got this thing going. My husband's working on a couple of different things. And I'm like, what's next for me? What do I want?
Now
the
what?
next, yeah, I'm in my own now what moment. Now, what do I want this to look like? And so what I do in those, the white space is part of it, but what was really important for me, and I suggest anybody else who's in one of those moments that's not a trauma space where you're just not trying to figure out how to get forward, but to go, okay, me 5 years from now, what do I want that me 5 years from now to look like? And then I can go, do I want to be like sitting in this same office, in this podcast booth, and looking out this same window and still doing this same work? Is that what I want to be doing? Do I want it to look different? Do I want it to be bigger or smaller? Like a lot of people in my space, they want to get their own TV show. I do not want a TV show. I already did show TV, 3 shows a day for 15 years.
Yeah.
My goals are different. But what do I want that to look like? So what is me 5 years from now? What do I want that to look like? And you have to get really quiet and think about it. Where do you want to be sitting and having your coffee in the morning? Like, what does it look like you 5 years from now? Who's around you? What's outside the window? Like, what does it look like 5 years from now? And how do you feel about yourself? And then it's really simple to go, let me just do one thing today that takes me towards that. All I have to do today is make sure that the actions I'm taking move me towards that. And I can vet all of my actions around yes or no, or accept this or don't accept that, if it gets me towards that thing. And if it doesn't, it's much easier to go, yeah, I'm not going to jump on that board or be part of that program or jump in and make this new best friend who's probably not going to take me in a good direction. Whatever it is. Yeah. Yeah.
That's awesome. Perfect place to end. Nina, thank you so much for being here. This was awesome. I would like to talk to you again and talk to you more. A lot of this stuff is like yourself. I mean, it's what I help people with very similarly, but also what I am constantly trying to navigate myself.
Yep.
So I felt myself a couple of times getting tuned up emotionally today, and I appreciate you being here.
Well, I appreciate being on, and I do love your perspective on things too, and I've listened to your podcast and will continue to do so. And thank you. Thank you for making me a part of it, making me a part of your world, and trusting me with your audience.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you. My name is Rain Bennett. Thanks for listening. If you're already a subscriber and you're enjoying the show, give us a review and let us know the value that you've gotten from it. We love to hear from our listeners and learn about the benefits that they're getting from the show. That's what fuels us, and that's what fuels the show. And if you've already subscribed and you've already reviewed it and you think there's someone else that would benefit from listening to this show, please share it with them. The more we grow, the more we can help you grow, and that's what we're here to do. Join us next time on the Storytelling Lab.